Hey everybody, welcome back to Papa B's Old Time Repair and Restoration. I'm Mike, and today I'm sitting beside my 66 Ford, my daily transportation, while I'm just putting around doing things. And no, we're not going to be working on the 66 Ford today. Today we're going to be back on the John Deere DI project. And if you'll remember last time, we took the crankshaft out of the crankcase. But not without incidents. We had a issue right there at the last where the crankshaft dropped, and it's made out of good stuff because it rang like a bell. But I think we came out okay on that because I did not find any damage at all to that crankshaft. So that's a good thing. So today what we're going to do is start on the transmission. So we're going to remove the steering box, the PTO attachment, fender brackets, get ourselves down to the internals. Going to remove the PTO drive, the shift rails, the sliding gear shaft, and the reduction gear, hopefully in that order. So let's see what kind of mess we get in today with the John Deere DI. Appreciate you following along. I'm going to start today on this transmission, but first I need to get a lot of this extra stuff off of the case. So I'm going to pull the fender brackets, I'm going to pull the steering box, the steering shaft support, get that all out of the way, and then we'll get started on the transmission. Gonna have to be raised up to get that nut off. Maybe the same way with this one also. As you may have noticed before, I've already got the steering wheel pulled off of the shaft, and I've also already sent it off and had it recovered. I sent it to Evergreen Restoration up to Jerry Turka, and did a fantastic job. If I get a chance, I'll show you what it looks like, but it was well worth having it done. So Jerry, if you happen to be watching, I appreciate it. Well, that's not exactly what I expected. That is, I knew it would be worn, but that is more worn than I thought it might be. There we go. I've already pre-loosened the steering arm here on the bottom of the steering shaft. There was some conversation on the forums on Facebook about getting this off, and as you can see by the color, I did use a little bit of heat to get that off. It was pretty well fastened on to the end of the spline shaft, and I did not realize, and I'll show you this, there was this spring and a washer, and according to the book, this is the steering shaft seal washer and the spring. This is actually the first tractor I've taken apart that this has been intact. Usually stuff like this is gone, so kind of an interesting little piece right there. Get a pry bar and see if we can get that steering box up out of there. That is pretty well stuck. There, it popped. Okay. Reach in and finish pulling off the nuts. Come around to the other side. All right, that should do it. There we go. Put the steering wheel nut back on. And also the felt retainer and the spring and the washer and the nut on the bottom of the shaft just to keep it together. Let's get this fender bracket off, as well as the other. Okay. And there's that one. Okay. And we're going to take the 4 mounting bolts out of the power takeoff. More. Okay, it's moved a little bit. All right. I'll put all 4 of these bolts down there. Lay this here. Let's see how we get along with this PTO. Yeah, we're coming. Get the screwdriver here to help it along. There we go. Now I've already previously, and I will show you that, I removed the shifter arm off of the shifter shaft up here that operates the PTO. So I've already got that taken loose. So see if we can get it out of the hole. Okay. There we go. You may have noticed this stick sticking out of the differential case, and I've been using it to push this very thick separated grease material out of this differential case toward the drain plug. So it's been quite a mess, and there's still a lot of cleanup to do, but we'll take this out for now, and we'll get started on the shifter shaft. We'll pull these two bolts out of the shifter quadrant and get those out of the way. Always nice to see some more yellow paint here. Kind of makes me excited. We'll get this quadrant out of the way, and then we'll get started taking the shifter arm off the end of the shifter shaft. There we go. And we'll just go ahead and take that off right there. Okay, now I've got you pointed down into the transmission above the shift rails, the shifter arm, and of course below that is the sliding gear shaft. I've already loosened this bolt on the shifter arm. And the first thing we need to do is get this off of the shifter shaft so we can withdraw the shaft out of the case. So I'll get this set here, and I'm going to tap this gently. And I have tools falling. There we go. Coming right off. There's the shifter shaft, or the shifter arm that goes on the shaft. And I will put the bolt back in that. Set it aside. Okay, we're going to roll this shaft over and let it, actually the shift lever is over here and it's upside down. I'll try to get a hold of this key and get it out of the shaft. It may or may not come out with these. Got a punch. We're going to see if we can drive this down. And yeah, it appears that we are. We'll try to drive the other side. There we go. Yeah, we're okay. Now we're probably going to be able to reach in here and get a hold. And there we are. There's the Woodruff key. Now we can slip this spring off of the end of the shaft. That's one of the springs that helps center the shift arm and the shift gate. Now we should be able to bring you back right here. And slip this shaft further out the back. And you can see we have a cotter pin and another spring. Go, and that is going to break off, and it's already falling out. So yeah, that was not too difficult right there. And just like that, out we come. Okay, next up we're going to remove this side cover, and we'll see what we find when we do that. Honestly, I'm not sure if this little one has to come off before the main cover, but we'll go ahead and take it off, because at any rate it'll have to be resealed eventually. So let's see what we find. May actually hold a bearing the way it acts, so don't know. I'll go take a look at the book before I do any more. Okay, after looking at that, I noticed something rather unusual about these shims. These shims are actually split right across here. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and try to remove the entire cover and then see what's inside of that. I don't think there's anything there that's going to cause me any issues, but we'll see. I'll go on here. I see this plug right here. Wondering if there is any fluid captured in there. I may want to remove that. One more. Okay. Now, I don't know if I've got a 12 point that'll fit that square. I'm gonna see. Maybe. There we go. Now, let's see what surprises are behind the... Oh yeah. There's something there. I mentioned that I was taking stuff out of this differential. I'll bring you over here and let you take a look. This is what is coming out right there. And you know, it's that's what I was pushing out of it, out of the differential with the stick. And you know, it's just as solid as it looks. So anyway, yeah, part of it though. So all right, I'm on the stick. Screwdriver in there. Yeah, just like that. Ugh. Well, Yeah, it acts like it's gonna starting to come out. I think we're gonna let that drain a while before we break this gasket loose and have a gigantic mess on our hands. I've got all of the mounting bolts loose off of this left side cover on the transmission, and I'm gonna take a chisel and see. We've already got a gap started right there, so I'm gonna tap this off. Try to get my pry bar in here and see if this will continue to come out like I think it should. Yeah, it's moving. Okay, yeah, there we go. Feels like it could be. Oh, there we go. All it took was just getting a little bit of. All right, so there is the PTO drive assembly. So we're going to take it and set it aside. It's actually pretty heavy. Okay. I'll bring you in. So right here is the end of the sliding gear assembly. So this shifter for the PTO drive will need to come out, and this gear will have to come off, and then we'll move up into getting the shifters out of the top of the transmission. So let's get started with that. To get the PTO shifter off the sliding gear, the first thing we're going to have to do is get this set bolt and jam nut out of the case. And it's safety wired to the top of the transmission case. So we'll get started and get that out. My hands are going to get in the way here, but the first thing that we're going to do is reach in here, cut this safety wire. There we go. Next we're going to loose jam nut on the cinch bolt and get it. I think I can't hardly turn it, but I think I've got it. It's loose. There we go. We'll get this jam nut out off of that shifter shaft, and then we'll be able to the nut is wanting to just sit. There we go. It actually feels like there may be some type of lock washer under that. Yes, there was a lock washer underneath the jam nut. So we've got all of that out in good shape. Now we should be able to drive that shifter shaft back into the case. After consulting the book and not getting any help from that really, I discovered that I was going about this the wrong way. And the PTO shifter shaft actually comes out this direction right here. There's just not enough room, even with moving one of the sliding gears as far to the right as I could. There was just not enough room for it to come out on the other side. So anyway, we've got the shifter shaft out. Here's that cotter pin that's got to come out. Get the light turned back on. There's a, sorry for the topsy-turvy, there's a cotter pin in the end of that shifter that's got to come out, and then I'll be able to slip that off of the shifter arm. I think we're gonna here's the cotter key. Now we can flip that forward. Okay, move that around. There we go. And there's the PTO shifter. And the sliding gear comes right off. There's one thing that I am excited about is so far all of the gearing in the transmission looks exceptionally good. Starting with the shifter rail now, the first thing we need to do is remove this bolt right here, and that bolt screws into the end of the shifter shaft. So we're going to take this out. Reach through the gear. Alright, there's that bolt. Put that in my magnetic tray. Next, we should be able to screw out the shifter adjustment. There we go. A little bit stiff, but it's coming out. This screw is used to center the shifted gears onto the differential. Make sure you get all your gears in line. And of course that bolt screws right in there and locks that up. So, all right. Next we've got to remove the set screw. We need to remove that locking bolt that holds the shifter shaft in place from moving. Since my hands are going to be in the way of everything, I'm just going to go ahead and get that off camera, and then I'll bring you back once I've got it out. We've got the locking screw out of the shifter rail shaft, and next we're going to work on the detents. The first thing to do, just like on the rest of it, is to get the safety wire cut off. Now the book says just to slide the shifters off of the rail, but these detents right here are spring loaded. Some detents and some transmissions have little holes down here in the detent towers where you can raise them up and lock them in place. I have looked on these, I don't see that. So what I'm going to do, I am going to pull the cotter pins out of that and catch the spring and everything that comes on out. Hopefully it is not gonna hit me in the face either. Okay, there's that. I think that may have worked like we wanted it to. There was not a terrible lot of spring pressure on them. Okay, there's the spring. I don't know if I can do this or not. I'm going to try. Yeah, there's probably enough goo in there. Okay, I'm just going to have to be careful when I slide that off that I catch those detent plugs. So let me go ahead and get this other cotter pin and spring out. We'll go ahead and see if we can drive the shift rail. I had a microphone glitch, so we'll continue on with taking the second shifter fork out. I'm removing the spring from the shifter detent, and as before, the plunger is staying inside the shift fork. So now we'll move the shifter shaft out of the case and remove the assembly. With the shifter fork out, you can see that the detent plunger is safely captured within the fork. We'll continue on and get the second fork out. Now it's time to try to get the sliding shaft out of the transmission case. The first thing that we're going to do is remove the snap ring off of the shaft that's holding the bearing on the shaft. The sliding gear shaft needs to be moved out of the right side of the transmission case. In order to do that, we'll need to remove the bolts holding the bearing retainer beneath the reduction gear. So we'll do that now. The bearing on this end of the sliding gear shaft is a slip fit on the OD of the bearing in the case and a slight press fit on the ID of the bearing. The IT manual says that you can move the sliding shaft inboard into the transmission case, then use one of the sliding gears to bump this bearing off the shaft. Unfortunately, the bearing proved to be a lot tighter than this gear would remove. So stay tuned while we struggle to get this bearing off the shaft. We're making some progress, but it's going pretty slow, so we'll keep at it, trying to move the shaft out of the case. I'm using a variety of tools to try to move the shaft. A brass punch, an oak block, and later on a piece of 1/2-inch flat steel. The last thing I want to do is damage the end of that shaft. You may be wondering how I'm keeping that bearing and shaft from moving back to the inside of the case. I'll explain that later on in the video. Here, frustration is starting to take its toll, and I'm trying to figure out if I can rig up some type of puller to press on that shaft to move it out of the case. As you can see, the puller wasn't big enough to do any good, so back to the hammer and tools. We're finally making some progress here. We've got the bearing moved out far enough on the shaft that I'm going to slide it internally into the case and make a few taps with the brass punch to finish taking it off. And there we have it. The shaft is out. Okay, I'm going to bring you back in and show you. I've recreated how I was holding all these gears and things while I was driving the shaft out of the left side of the tractor. As you can see down below, you see the bearing down in the bearing bore. And I've got the 2x4 wedged between the bearing and the side of this sliding gear set. And I've also got this sliding gear set up tight against this gear in the differential assembly. And the reason I did that was to keep those gears from sliding back and forth and slapping against each other. That's generally where you break or chip gear teeth or hardened metal or anything, is through impact. And I was trying to keep all of the impact and the motion out of this. And I got along pretty good, except right at the very end. I believe the bearing got crooked on the end of the shaft. So I came in through the top and tapped it a couple times with my brass punch, and the bearing came right off. So I was glad about that. Glad to see that I came out without any damage and we got the bearing off. But it just goes to show you that you can't always believe what the book tells you. Sometimes you've got to think up another way to get things out. It wasn't my first choice of the way to do it, but at least we were successful doing it. Okay, folks, I'm going to go ahead and bring these gears out and we'll take a look at them. Get my wood block out of there. Here's the first gear set. Don't see any damage anywhere, and everything really looks pretty amazing. It really does. No appreciable wear at the engagement points where you shift. Not folded over. Really nice. And here's the second gear, and as you can see, much the same way. Engagement points are good, no fractures, no breaks, splines are good. So very pleased about that. So we made some good progress. Still got a long ways to go. I'm going to do my best this year to try to make videos on a more timely fashion. So I want to try to get this video out in the next few days. The weather is supposed to turn here. In fact, the wind has gone almost calm here. And us here in Oklahoma, as long as most of the rest of the country is getting ready to get pretty cold for a few days. So anyway, hope everybody makes it through the cold weather all right. And I think that's going to be a wrap from Papa B's Old Time Repair and Restoration. This is Mike, and we'll bring you back for the next adventures on the John Deere DI. Thanks for watching.